London Fog Ashes. Chapter 1 Farewell in the Mist, Fading Warmth. London's fog has always concealed the gentlest death trap. On the banks of the River Thames in November, thick mist wrapped piercing damp cold, blurring the entire city into a sheet of grayish-white. At 3 in the morning, Parliament Bridge stood empty. Cold iron railings were studded with tiny beads of water, and wind swept across the bridge, stirring the haze into faint whimpers, unheard cries of grief. Evelyn Hart stood at the bridge's center, her white cashmere coat billowing in the night wind. Raven hair clung messily to her pale cheeks. Her fingertips, raw red from the cold, clamped tight around a faded platinum cufflink. Its edges had been worn smooth by years, etched with a tiny family crest, the Astley family's thorn rose twined around a drooping silver sword. It was the only token she had carried close to her skin for 3 years, the sole trace Samuel Astley had left etched into her life. Slow, steady footsteps echoed behind her, leather shoes crushing damp flagstones. The sound cut clean through the heavy fog, one step, then another, trampling Evelyn's already shattered heartbeat. She did not turn. She did not need to. She knew exactly who it was. No one else in the world moved with such reserved, solitary coldness, no one else held the power to twist every thread of her emotions with such ease. The mist parted to frame his tall figure. The man emerged slowly, clad in an immaculate bespoke black suit with sharp, straight shoulders, a testament to his innate nobility and detachment. He stood rigid amid the haze, his deep, sculpted features magnified by the dim night. Pale golden lashes cast faint shadows over slate blue eyes, calm and blank, devoid of any trace of feeling. 3 years apart, and Samuel remained the most dazzling figure in London's high society, the Astley patriarch who wielded life and death, lofty and untarnished by mortal dust. Only he was no longer the boy who had once belonged to her. Venturing out to catch a chill at this ungodly hour, Miss Hart, how exquisitely refined of you. He spoke first, his voice low and magnetic, laced with the lazy cold unique to a British accent, yet every word was frigid, void of warmth. That distant address Miss Hart carved a clean divide between the 3 years that lay between them, and all the love and hatred tangled within. Evelyn closed her eyes slowly, a bitter metallic taste rising in her throat. 3 years prior, he would have pulled her into his arms, wrapped her frozen hands in his warm palms, and whispered her nickname Lynn. He would tuck her inside his overcoat, press his forehead to hers, and murmur, "Fear not. I am always here. Always." How ridiculous a word. She turned at last, mist brushing her eyes, stripping away every trace of softness until nothing remained but desolate emptiness. She lifted her gaze to the man before her, the one she had loved for 10 years, and hated for 3. Samuel, her voice drifted thin and broken on the wind. I ask you one last time. When all that happened back then, did you feel even a shred of guilt? Was there a single fleeting moment when you regretted it? Samuel's irises flickered, a faint undercurrent surging through his slate blue pupils, gone too fast to catch. He lowered his gaze to her pale, fragile face, his eyes lingering on her white-knuckled grip around the cufflink. His thin lips parted, delivering the cruelest answer. No! Unwavering, no room for compromise. In an instant, every ounce of strength drained from Evelyn's body. The cufflink slipped from her grasp, sliding through the gaps in the cold railings to plummet into the dark, murky Thames far below. No splash, no ripple, just like her 10 years of love, poured out completely, sinking silently away, unseen and unacknowledged. She stared at the cold man before her, the last spark of light in her eyes snuffed out, swallowed by endless, all-consuming frost. Very well. A single word fell from her lips, a bitter, broken smile tugging at her mouth as tears finally spilled down her cheeks, hitting her overcoat and turning icy in an instant. From this moment, we owe each other nothing. The words barely faded before she leaned forward, throwing herself without hesitation over the rail into the fog below. The wind howled, churning mist into a raging tide. Samuel's perpetual composure shattered entirely. His pupils blue-eyed, and an invisible hand clamped down on his heart, choking agony flooding every limb. He reached for her instinctively, his fingertips barely brushing the strands of her floating hair, catching nothing but frigid, empty air. Evelyn! For the first time in his life, the unflappable Astley air lost control, his roar hoarse and splintered, raw with utter terror. But it was too late. The fog swallowed her silhouette, and the Thames silenced all tenderness and obsession. Only the man stood alone on the bridge, wind whipping the hem of his coat. The noble, poised frame trembled violently for the first time. His hands hung stiff at his sides, and crimson despair split open his slate-blue eyes. 3 years of buried love and despair crumbling to ruin at last. The world called Samuel Astley cold, ruthless, unburdened by weakness. Only he knew his sole vulnerability had just drowned in the Thames, trapped in the dead end he had built with his own hands. London's fog would never lift. Love endured until death. For every remaining year of his life, he would stand alone, imprisoned by endless regret. Chapter 2: Gentle Summers, Youthful Infatuation. The story began 10 years ago, in a summer English manor. Back then, London knew no endless cold fog. Warm sunlight filtered through the boughs of century-old oak trees, spilling streaks of gilded light across the lawns. On the outskirts of Devon lay the Astley Manor, carpeted in green grass, climbing roses twisting over vintage stone walls, evening breezes heavy with rich floral perfume soft beyond compare. 17-year-old Evelyn was the brightest, most vivid girl in all London. Though the Hart family lacked the Astleys' overwhelming power and influence, they were established old nobility, a house of scholars, gentle and respectable. Raised with meticulous care, Evelyn possessed soft, sweet features and a warm, fiery temperament, like the brightest summer sun, pure, unblemished, radiating warmth. She was 17, fresh out of boarding school and returned to London, invited to the Astley family's summer gala. It was at that banquet that she fell at first sight, bound to a lifetime of heartache. Samuel Astley, 20 years old, was already the most striking figure of London's elite. For generations, the Astleys held sway over London's finance and aristocratic circles, steeped in wealth and power. As the sole heir, Samuel had endured the strictest elite education from childhood, calm, restrained, brilliant, decisive, revealing the bearing of a clan ruler from a young age. Born atop the social pyramid, he carried an air of innate nobility and cold detachment, his aura repelling all who drew near. Countless noble ladies vied for his attention, yet he never spared a single glance for any of them. The grand summer gala glittered with silk and champagne, guests mingling in endless chatter. Dozens of elegant young ladies lingered in the courtyard, stealing covert glances at the untouchable young Lord Astley. Only Evelyn, untouched by worldly guile, clutched a volume of poetry and hid beneath the rose trellis, on the manor's west side, reading quietly, far from the commotion. Evening wind stirred her dress, an off-white gown setting off skin fair as snow, her eyes soft and mild. Sunlight caught her thick eyelashes, casting faint shadows, peaceful, perfect. She thought her hiding spot was secret, unaware she had already fallen beneath a deep, unwavering gaze. Samuel slipped away from the chattering guests, wandering toward the trellis. He lifted his eyes and saw her. In a world of men chasing fame and women performing calculated charm, she was clean as blank paper, lost in her own quiet world, untouched by earthly vanity. In that moment, the frozen lake of his heart rippled for the very first time. He was perpetually restrained, never stirred by strangers, yet his gaze locked onto the girl's sweet profile and would not shift away. Evelyn noticed the shadow falling beside her and looked up abruptly. She crashed headlong into a pair of deep, oceanic slate-blue eyes. The man stood tall on the line between light and shadow, half bathed in sunlight, half shrouded in dusk, his refined, icy features flawless, aristocratic detachment carved into his bones, yet his gaze weighed heavy, fixed unblinkingly on her. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat, heat flooding her cheeks. She clutched her poetry book tightly and rose hastily, dipping into a modest curtsy. "Lord Astley." Her voice was soft and sweet, like the gentlest summer breeze. Samuel lowered his eyes to her flushed ear tips, a faint flicker of warmth crossing his perpetually cold gaze. His thin lips parted, his voice low and pleasant. "No need to be formal, Miss Hart." He knew who she was, the youngest Hart daughter, rumored to be mild, pure, bright, the unspoiled maiden of London's aristocracy. He had dismissed the tales as hearsay until now, reality far outshone every whisper. "Hiding here to read?" He stepped closer, his gaze brushing the Keats collection in her hands. Evelyn nodded faintly, speaking softly. "The ballroom is too loud. I'm not fond of crowds." Quiet and gentle by nature, she disliked hollow social niceties and noisy superficiality. She preferred solitary peace over the fame-driven banquet hall. At her words, Samuel's lips tugged upward by a fraction, a rare soft smile almost no one else had ever witnessed. "I feel the same." 3 simple words bridged the distance between them instantly. That afternoon, sunlight perfect, flowers heavy with scent, the cold, distant young lord set aside all his sharp edges and stayed with the naive, tender girl beneath the rose trellis, talking of poetry and romance for hours on end. He never wasted words on trivial chatter with others, yet he listened patiently as she rambled about her favorite verses, school anecdotes, and small, pure hopes glinting in her eyes. He spoke little, mostly listening, responding now and then in a soft voice, his attention unwaveringly fixed on her. No one had ever given Evelyn such wholehearted focus before. Others admired her gentle obedience, but only Samuel saw the sincerity and purity beneath her soft exterior, tolerating every ounce of her innocence and trivial whims. As the sun dipped low, sunset gold spilling over the manor, their shadows stretched long, pressed close together on the grass. When it was time to part, Samuel stared at her flushed features and spoke quietly. "If you grow weary of society, you may come to the manor to find me, anytime." Evelyn's head shot up, tiny stars igniting in her clear, fervent eyes. "Truly?" Samuel nodded, his gaze soft and certain. "You are always welcome, Lynn." It was the first time he had spoken her nickname, affectionate, gentle, carried on the evening wind to take root and bloom deep within her heart. That single soft address, that summer encounter, bound Evelyn to a 10-year devotion, pouring every part of herself into a love that began with tenderness and ended in ruin. From that day forward, the 17-year-old girl carried Samuel Astley inside her soul. She visited the Astley Manor often, sometimes bearing homemade pastries, sometimes new poetry collections, sometimes simply to see him. Everyone noticed the young heart girl's affections, met with kind teasing and malicious speculation alike. Gossip swirled endlessly. After all, in the eyes of society, naive, unremarkable Evelyn was no match for the towering, powerful Samuel. Yet Samuel never shunned her, never pulled away. He allowed her closeness, accepted every gesture of her tenderness, even indulged her adoration openly. When she arrived soaked from rain, he would hold an umbrella himself, shielding her against every drop of stormwater tucked safely against his chest. When she nodded off mid-book, he would work quietly at his desk and let her slumber on his shoulder. When others mocked her for climbing the social ladder, he silenced them with frigid, intimidating words. "She is my guest. None of you have leave to judge her." One sentence sealed all gossip, preserving her dignity. The tenderness back then was too real, his favor too unreserved, leading Evelyn to believe his heart belonged to her too. She thought if she persisted, if she loved fiercely enough, she could melt his frozen heart, win his unhidden devotion, and claim an official, unashamed future beside him. On her 18th birthday, London blazed with starlight, soft evening breezes carrying warmth. Samuel led her to the manor's highest viewing platform, overlooking London's thousands of glowing lanterns. Starlight pooled in his deep eyes, impossibly gentle. He drew out a custom platinum cufflink, fastening it to his own sleeve, then looked down at the girl whose eyes sparkled like starlight, whispering a promise. "Lynn, once you come of age, once I secure full control of my family's power, I will marry you. You, and only you. I will never leave you." The young heir's vow was solemn and soft, echoing beneath the stars, every syllable unshakable. Evelyn stared at his gentle features, tears streaming down her face as she nodded hard. She believed him, wholeheartedly, without reservation. She took that promise as the faith guiding her remaining years, the man as her sole lifelong destination. But she did not yet understand that the aristocratic world knew no pure love. Power, profit, family, old grudges, anyone could crush the truest tenderness to dust. What she thought was mutual devotion had carried the seeds of tragedy from the very start. Chapter 3: Deep Love, Hidden Tides. Once she came of age, Evelyn grew softer and more beautiful, shedding the naivety of youth for quiet, tender longing. Her heart still belonged wholly to Samuel, loving purely, fiercely, without restraint. Their relationship was an open secret across London's nobility. No formal announcement, no official betrothal, yet everyone knew Lord Astley held the young heart girl in his heart. Samuel's favor toward her was plain for all to see, unhidden. He would turn down all irrelevant social engagements to spend every important occasion with her. He remembered every one of her likes and dislikes, knew her fear of darkness, cold, and loneliness, tending to every flicker of her emotion with meticulous care. When she suffered injustice, he stood at her side instantly, shielding her completely. Cold and taciturn toward all others, he was gentle, patient, endlessly indulgent with her alone. Late nights in the manor's study always unfolded the same quiet scene. Samuel sat at his desk buried under mountains of family documents and financial affairs, his features sharp, an oppressive aura of untouchable authority hanging thick around him. Evelyn sat peacefully on the sofa beside him, reading, glancing up every so often to gaze at the hardworking man, her eyes brimming with soft smiles. Warm lamplight filled the room, silence sweet, time calm and gentle. Once his work was finished, Samuel turned to her at once, casting off all his cold weariness to pull her into his arms, pressing his forehead to hers and murmuring softly, "Did you wait long?" Evelyn would shake her head, wrapping her arms around his waist and burying her face in his warm chest, her voice muffled and soft. "Waiting for you is never a burden." Their embraces were hot and full of love then, enough to fend off every cold thing in the world. Samuel stroked her hair gently, a softness no other soul ever saw flooding his eyes, his voice low and tender. "I've kept you waiting, Lynn. Bear with me a little longer." He always told her to wait. Evelyn never pressed him, willing to wait day after day, year after year. She knew the Astley clan was torn by internal strife, side branches hungry for power, the old lord's health failing, political and business forces tangled on every side, his every step fraught with danger. She refused to become a burden to him, wishing only to stand quietly beside him as his one harbor of softness. Yet slowly, she sensed something shifting, festering unseen in the shadows. The first storm came from family pressure. As the heir of top nobility, Samuel's marriage was never his to choose, tied to the clan's prosperity, business alliances, and power balance, no room for personal affection. After the old lord fell gravely ill, the influence of the clan's side branches swelled. Faction leaders, headed by Samuel's great-uncle, fought fiercely to sever his ties with Evelyn. In their eyes, the Hart family lacked prestige, unable to offer the Astleys power or financial advantage. Gentle, naive Evelyn understood nothing of power struggles, unfit to stand as the future Lady Astley. They pressed Samuel relentlessly, arranging meetings with daughters of the most powerful noble houses, promising vast business empires through strategic marriage, forcing him to cut all contact with Evelyn. At first, Samuel rejected every proposal, his stance unyielding. Before all the clan elders, he spoke coldly and firmly. "My wife will be Evelyn Hart, and no one else." Back then, his power had begun to solidify, giving him the strength to stand against his entire family for her sake. When Evelyn learned of it, she felt equal parts moved and grieved, holding him close and whispering, "If it is too hard, I can wait. I can wait forever, do not force yourself for me." Samuel tightened his hold, crushing her against his chest, his tone resolute. "I will never let you suffer. Trust me." But power struggles were crueler than love. His great-uncle's faction had lusted after control of the clan for years, secretly gathering blackmail to seize power. Samuel's stubborn devotion to Evelyn became their greatest weapon against him. They moved to sabotage the industries under his control, cutting financial lifelines, spreading rumors that he neglected duty for romance and was unfit to rule, eroding his standing within the clan and business world. The danger mounted, hidden currents swirling, every step a minefield. Samuel's burdens grew heavier by the day, the softness fading from his eyes, replaced by deep exhaustion and cold restraint. He remained tender to Evelyn, yet he began hiding truths, pulling away, bearing every storm alone. Evelyn sensed his change sharply, yet she could not intervene, only stand by silently, growing increasingly cautious, terrified of weighing him down. True ruin arrived in their 7th year together. That winter, London endured a once-in-a-century cold snap, heavy snow burying the city, bitter winds cutting deep. His great-uncle allied with clan dissidents and foreign capital to set an inescapable trap, short-selling the Astleys' core industries, sending share prices plummeting, cutting off cash flow, driving partners to break contracts, plunging the family's decades-old business to the brink of collapse overnight. The Astleys faced an unprecedented crisis, their legacy teetering on ruin. Worse still, the opposition held records of a risky early investment Samuel had made, evidence enough to ruin his reputation, strip him of his inheritance, even land him in prison. At rock bottom, the rival faction laid out their single condition for truce. First, Samuel must cut all ties with Evelyn Hart, never to see her again. Second, he must enter a strategic marriage with the daughter of the noble Windsor family, leveraging their wealth and influence to stabilize the family's business and end the crisis. Third, he must publicly declare that he never loved Evelyn, erasing every trace of their shared past, severing all hope. 3 terms, each a blade to the heart. On one side stood the family legacy he had spent his life protecting, the livelihoods of hundreds of staff, his lifelong duty and responsibility. On the other stood the girl he had loved for 7 years, the promise he had sworn to keep for life. No crueler choice existed beneath heaven. That night, snow fell thick, the manor lamps blazing bright yet shrouded in suffocating silence. Samuel stood alone before the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the blizzard rage outside, his tall frame lonely enough to break hearts. A cigarette burned between his fingers, its glow flickering, his eyes churning with pain, struggle, and despair. 7 years of deep love, days and nights side by side. Evelyn had become obsession woven into his bones, the only light in his dark life. Yet he was the Astley heir, born bound to the clan's mission, trapped by fate, no choice left. He could gamble his own future, his own life, but he could not gamble the family's century-old legacy, condemning countless lives to ruin for the sake of his love. He stood at that window all night, snow settling on his shoulders, the tenderness and longing in his heart freezing and crumbling inch by inch. Dawn broke, the snow dying down. He stubbed out the cigarette, every trace of softness vanishing from his eyes, leaving only frozen cold and suffocating restraint. He made his choice. He would trade a lifetime of regret to protect his family, abandoning the love of his life. Chapter 4: Cruel Separation, Words that Slay the Heart. A pale, feeble winter sun pierced heavy clouds, casting frigid light over the manor's cold stone walls, devoid of any warmth. Evelyn arrived at Astley Manor as she always did, carrying a pot of homemade warm soup. Samuel had been buried in work these past days, laboring through sleepless nights, growing thinner, exhaustion etched beneath his eyes. Her heart ached watching him, so she brought soup every day, quietly tending to his daily life. She believed once this difficult period passed, everything would heal. She thought their 7 years of love could withstand any storm. She never imagined what awaited her would be a heart-wrenching, soul-shattering farewell. The study door stood wide open, no lights lit inside, the air thick with oppressive silence. Samuel sat behind his desk, his back rigid to her, an aura of icy detachment wrapping around him. In days past, the instant she pushed the door open, he would turn at once, soft warmth flooding his gaze. Today, he did not move, silent and terrifying. A faint weight settled in Evelyn's chest, a nameless unease rising. She spoke gently. "Amu, I brought soup for you. Drink it while it's hot, do not exhaust yourself so." She stepped lightly forward, setting the insulated pot on the desk, her soft voice trying to chase away the cold silence. Only then did Samuel slowly turn to face her. No emotion marked his face, not a flicker of the old warmth and tenderness in his slate blue eyes, only unyielding, bone-deep cold and indifference. Those eyes that once brimmed with starlight and softness were hollow, frozen solid for all eternity. At the sight of his gaze, Evelyn's heart clenched tight, sharp pain racing through every limb, her fingers trembling faintly. "Amu, what is wrong?" she asked cautiously, anxiety thick in her eyes. Samuel lowered his gaze, his stare gliding over her worried, tender features, his thin lips parting to unleash words frigid enough to cut flesh. "Evelyn, we are done." 6 short words, light as a breath, yet a blade dipped in ice piercing her heart, shattering every thread of her devotion and love in an instant. Her body stiffened, blood turning cold in her veins, her breath catching short. She stared at the man before her in disbelief, the starlight in her eyes shattering completely, confusion flooding her vision. What did you say?" Her voice shook violently, panic and denial warring within her, tears rushing to her eyes instantly. 7 years together, endless soft days, shared intimacy, vows for a lifetime. How could a single phrase end it all without warning? Samuel avoided her tearful eyes, his gaze hard as iron, his tone unyielding, every syllable decisive. I said we are finished, completely. Tears spilled freely down Evelyn's cheeks, splashing against her cold hands, burning hot. She stared at his cold features, searching for a hint of jest, remorse, hidden restraint, yet there was nothing. Only ice-cold indifference, as if 7 years of love had been nothing more to him than a trivial pastime. Why? She sobbed, her voice broken. Is it the family pressure? I can wait forever. We can weather this together, Amu, do not leave me, please. She begged humbly, pouring out every scrap of her tenderness, pleading that he would not let go. Yet Samuel only lifted his eyes slightly, a flash of agonized restraint flickering through his gaze before coldness swallowed it whole. He forced his voice flat, speaking the cruelest lines to destroy every memory they shared. It has nothing to do with the family. His tone was detached, steeped in heartlessness. I simply grew tired of it. 7 years was enough to wear away all novelty. I am weary, I no longer wish to continue this meaningless relationship. A crash echoed inside Evelyn's mind, her world collapsing into total darkness. Tired of it? 7 years of unwavering devotion, 7 years of wholehearted surrender, 7 years of undying love reduced to a casual admission of boredom. She clutched her dress so tight her nails dug into her palms, the physical pain trivial beside the agony tearing her chest apart. Tears blurred her vision as she stared at the familiar yet alien man, her voice raw and splintered. You are lying. Samuel, you are not this man. You used to. He cut her off before she could finish. I have never lied to you. You were merely too naive, too full of your own fantasies. He stood tall, cold and imposing, looking down at her, his gaze hollow and unfeeling, each word a stab to her dignity. Did you truly believe I would marry a woman of modest lineage who could offer me no advantage? My past tenderness toward you was merely idle entertainment. Now I must take control of my family, and I require a marriage of equal standing. You were never a suitable match for me. Miss Hart, face reality. Stop clinging to empty fantasies and humiliating yourself. Every sentence sliced her heart open again and again, grinding her love and pride into dust. Evelyn shook all over, sobbing until she could barely draw breath, her throat dry and raw, unable to utter a single word. She stared at his cold, heartless face, at the man who had loved and spoiled her for 7 years, and for the first time he felt strange, terrifying. All his gentle favor, all his lifelong promises, nothing but meaningless pastime to fill his spare hours. All her selfless devotion and love, in his eyes, a ridiculous act of self-humiliation. So every promise you made before was a lie? She summoned every ounce of strength to whisper, the last spark of light fading utterly from her eyes. Samuel's heart convulsed violently, the metallic tang of blood rising in his throat, barely holding back every layer of his disguise. Yet he squeezed his palms until his knuckles whitened, forcing himself to harden his heart and deliver the final cruel blow. They were lies. I never meant a word. For words, severing 7 years of devotion for good. Evelyn laughed, bitter and broken, tears pouring non-stop. She stepped back slowly, staring at him, every trace of longing dead within her. I understand now. Samuel, it was my foolish infatuation, my pestering, my mistake. I will never disturb you again. With that, she turned without a single backward glance, staggering toward the door. Her thin frame looked lonely and desolate, every step a struggle, as if every ounce of life had been drained from her body. Winter's bitter wind rushed through the open doorway, tangling her coat in frigid air. Samuel stood frozen, watching her retreating figure, watching her broken, tear-streaked form stumble away, all strength draining from his limbs. He stumbled backward to grip the desk, his knuckles white with strain. Agony flooded his chest, threatening to drown him entirely. He ached to run to her, to hold her tight, to tell her every harsh word was a lie, to confess how deeply he loved her, to shield her for a lifetime of peace. But he could not. Behind him stood the entire Astley clan, the honor and livelihood of countless people hanging in the balance. He had no choice. He had to push the woman he loved away with his own hands, destroy every trace of their tenderness, force her to hate him so she would let go completely, escaping the endless danger of power struggles. Even if the cost was a lifetime of loneliness, endless regret. The door clicked shut, separating two worlds. The cold, empty study lost all warmth, soft laughter, quiet murmurs, the comfort of years spent side by side. Only the solitary man remained, surrounded by endless desolation and despair. After a long moment, a suppressed, shattered sob escaped his throat, low and broken. He covered his eyes with his hands, the perpetually cold, unyielding Astley air shedding hot, restrained tears for the first time. "Lynn, I am sorry. Forgive me for protecting your peace through the cruelest means possible. Even if from this day onward, we hate each other, forget each other, forever." Chapter 5. 3 years apart, yearning every day. After their separation, Evelyn vanished entirely from London's aristocratic circles. No one laid eyes on the bright, warm Miss Hart again. She severed every contact linked to Samuel, moved out of central London, cut ties with all familiar friends, and fled alone to a remote seaside town, sealing herself off from the world. 7 years of love, destroyed in a single day, had drained nearly all warmth and vitality from her soul. The once bright, laughing girl had transformed beyond recognition. She grew quiet, cold, reclusive, the starlight and joy gone from her eyes, replaced by unshakable gloom and emptiness. She would sit alone by the sea for entire days, watching the tides rise and fall, letting bitter wind bite her skin as silent tears fell. The memory of her shattered love, that casual phrase "I grew tired of it," became a scar carved deep into her soul, tearing at her heart night and day, no cure to ease the pain. She tried to let go, to heal, to build a new life. But every night when she closed her eyes, she saw his old gentle tenderness, then his cold, unyielding face at the end. Love had sunk into her marrow, hatred rooted equally deep, love and hate tangled, torturing her endlessly. Meanwhile, after pushing her away, Samuel stabilized the clan's crisis as planned. With brutal, ruthless tactics, he purged the dissident branches, dismantled his great-uncle's power, rescued the collapsing business empire, and secured his unchallenged position as head of the Astley family, power absolute, unrivaled. He honored the alliance agreement with the Windsor family, cementing his business and noble influence, becoming London's youngest and most elite power broker. The world envied his youth, decisiveness, boundless prospects, endless glory. Only he knew he had conquered power, wealth, every rival, yet lost the sole light of his life. 3 years passed, endless longing, endless regret, every single day. For 3 years, he had lived as a hollow shell. Colder, crueler, more withdrawn than before, not a trace of softness lingered around him. He buried himself in endless work, numbing himself with ceaseless labor, never daring to pause. The second he stilled, images flooded his mind, her tear-streaked broken face, her staggering retreat, 7 years of quiet warmth together. The manor remained unchanged, yet the girl who waited for him, loved him, thought of him was gone forever. The study sofa sat empty, no one reading quietly beside him through long nights, no soft voice calling him AMU, no one rushing to his side to shower him with unreserved tenderness. He preserved every one of her belongings, poetry books she read, teacups she used, ornaments she arranged, every trace she left at the manor untouched, polished daily. Yet he dared not touch the past, dared not speak her name. Evelyn Hart became his only weakness, his sole obsession, his forbidden subject, his personal ruin. He sent men to track her in secret for years, quietly following every detail of her life, yet never dared to disturb her, never dared to seek a meeting. He knew she had fled to the seaside town, knew she grew thinner and sadder, knew she suffered sleepless, miserable nights, knew she had never recovered from her grief. His heart ached with unbearable sorrow, drowned in regret, yet he watched only from afar, tormented in silence. He believed that distance would let her heal, let her live a quiet, peaceful life, meet someone new, find gentle happiness. He thought harsh separation, cutting ties completely, was the best way to keep her safe. He never imagined 3 years apart had erased none of their love and hatred, instead their obsessions festered, brewing an irreversible tragedy. No one knew Evelyn's quiet, isolated days were slowly consumed by illness. 3 years of endless emotional torment, love and hate gnawing at her, sleepless nights of despair had worn her body thin. Chronic depression and somatic disorders weakened her heart function steadily, leaving her frail and sickly. She lay awake night after night, her chest stabbing with pain, gasping for breath, teetering on suffocation countless dark evenings. She bore every ache and despair alone, telling no one, carrying every burden by herself. It was not that she refused to live well, only a world without him was cold and empty, nothing left to hold on to. The single obsession sustaining her was one unanswered question. She needed the truth, needed to hear from his own lips whether his cruelty 3 years prior came from helpless circumstance or genuine heartlessness. That fixation carried her through 3 lonely years. If she never asked, she would never find peace, even in death. So as her condition worsened, her days numbered, she resolved to return to London one last time. She would see him for the final time, ask the question buried in her heart for 3 years, untangle every thread of love and hatred, and finally release herself. If his answer remained cold and unfeeling, she would have no regrets left, ready for her story to end. Chapter 6 Reunion in the Fog City, Love and Hatred Entwined. After 3 years apart, Evelyn set foot on London's soil once more. The city still glittered with prosperity, fog still clung cold and damp, yet no warmth or tenderness remained for her here. Autumn wrapped London in unbroken mist, damp wind cutting through clothing, chilling her to the bone. Evelyn was far thinner than 3 years prior, her frame frail, her skin perpetually pale, her eyes heavy with unending weariness, no trace of the bright, lively girl she once was. Clad in a simple neutral coat, her hair loosely pinned back, her features quiet and cold, an aura of lonely separation clung to her, a misplaced shadow amid the bustling streets. 3 years had sanded away all her warmth and fire, leaving only desolation and exhaustion. She did not contact Samuel first, wandering silently through the city full of shared memories, streets they had walked side by side, views they had admired together until she reached Parliament Bridge. This place had hosted countless nights of quiet talks and shared wind beneath the moon, holding the sweetest memories and deepest obsessions alike. She waited for him here, waiting for the answer delayed 3 years. She knew Samuel drove past Parliament Bridge every night after finishing work, a habit unbroken for 3 years. Once she had not understood, but now she realized he lingered here nightly for the same reason as her, trapped in the past, torturing himself alone. Deep midnight, thick fog swallowing the silent city. A sleek black luxury car rolled slowly to a stop beside the bridge. The door opened, and a tall man stepped out, dressed in black suit, noble and cold, a powerful aura wrapping around him. 3 years had made him deeper, more distant, more unyielding. Samuel lifted his gaze, and instantly spotted the thin figure standing at the bridge's center. He froze completely, his breath catching, his heart shaking violently, shock, suppressed joy, and aching sorrow surging through him all at once. The woman he had missed every day, dared not disturb, stood before him without warning, shrouded in mist. Frail, lonely, pale and worn, heartbreakingly thin. 3 years of longing, regret, torment erupted in a flood, sweeping over every limb. His feet stiffened, and after a long moment he steadied his mind, stepping slowly toward her. Footsteps echoed through the fog, clear and distinct. Evelyn did not turn, standing motionless in the wind, her heart calm, no ripples stirring. Only when the man halted a short distance behind her did his low, frigid voice ring out, edged with faint tremor and panic. "Miss Hart." That distant address again, carving 3 years of separation cold and strange between them. Evelyn closed her eyes slowly, the last flicker of hope in her heart fading away. She turned at last, gazing at him calmly, no love, no hatred, only dead emptiness. "Samuel, I have returned to ask you one final question." Her voice was soft, steady, no sobs, no trembles, only utter peace, as if drawing a final close to a decade-long love. Samuel stared at her pale, sickly face, at the hollow emptiness in her eyes, his chest throbbing with stabbing pain, his throat dry and tight as he whispered, "Ask." Evelyn fixed her gaze firmly on his deep eyes, every word clear and deliberate. 3 years ago, you said you grew tired of me, that all your promises were lies, that I was merely a pastime to you. Now, do you feel even a shred of guilt? Was there a single moment you regretted it? This question had imprisoned her for 3 years, torturing her day and night without release. Samuel's irises shook wildly, stormy waves of emotion churning in his slate blue eyes, pain, regret, longing, restraint layered thick, barely containing his carefully crafted mask. He ached to nod, to tell her he regretted everything, that guilt gnawed at him daily, that he missed her every waking moment, never letting go for a second. But he could not. His power was secure now, the marriage contract signed, countless watchful eyes and rival factions surrounding him. If he revealed his true heart, admitted his hidden sacrifice, every old conflict would reignite, dragging Evelyn back into the deadly whirlpool of power struggles, stripping her of peace once more. He had wronged her enough already, he could not expose her to further danger. Better to let her hate him fully, cut all ties completely, and live the rest of her life in safety, than trap her in a limbo of tangled love and sorrow after learning the truth. After crushing restraint, he forced down every raging emotion inside him, his gaze hardening back to cold indifference, his thin lips forming the fatal reply. No! A single word, sealing everything. The last shred of strength left Evelyn's body, the obsession she had clung to for 3 years collapsing into nothingness. All her inner struggle, all her self-torture, all her attempts to heal nothing but a complete, absurd farce. Truly, he had never loved her, never felt guilt, never regretted a single choice. She glanced down at her empty fingers, the cufflink she had carried pressed smooth for 3 years suddenly glaringly cruel. It had been the promise of his youth, the faith guiding her 10 years, now nothing but wreckage and absurdity. The cufflink slipped from her powerless grasp, tumbling into the dark Thames, silent and unremarkable just like her grand, 10-year love, fading without echo. Her body tilted weightless, icy river water wrapping around Evelyn in an instant. The frigid black current seeped down her collar and sleeves, colder than London's winter storms, more piercing than Samuel's 3 years of coldness. Water flooded her chest, suffocating agony overwhelming her, her consciousness blurring fast. The wind, the fog, the broken roar of the man behind her all faded distant and faint. She did not struggle. A faint, relieved smile tugged at her pale, cracked lips. It was better this way. 10 years of devotion, 3 years of torment, love and hatred intertwined at last, an end. If he felt no remorse, then her obsessions, her wounds, her lifelong love could dissolve cleanly into the Thames fog, unburdened, owing nothing to anyone. Darkness crashed over her, swallowing her last shred of awareness, her thin frame drifting slowly down into the deep riverbed, resting beside the fallen cufflink, buried in endless cold. On the bridge, Samuel had shed all composure and restraint. He threw himself at the rail, fingers digging hard into the cold iron until his knuckles split open, blood dripping through the gaps into the vast river, vanishing instantly into the dark. Evelyn! Come back! His roar was hoarse and splintered, tearing through the early morning mist, filled with unmatched panic and despair. The poised, calculating Lord Astley, feared by all, stood ragged and shaking, crimson despair flooding his eyes, drowning him in endless remorse and helplessness. He climbed the tall rail without hesitation, ready to leap after her. His bodyguards and assistant rushed forward at once, wrapping their arms tight around his waist, dragging the out-of-control man back onto the bridge. "My lord! You cannot jump. The river current is deadly strong at night, drowning is certain. You must oversee the clan's affairs, you cannot throw your life away." Several men pinned his body rigid, not daring to loosen their grip for a second. They had served Samuel for years, never witnessing their ruthless master unravel so completely, despair radiating from him like a physical weight. "Let me go!" Samuel fought with wild, brutal strength, his shoulders heaving, his voice barely coherent through hoarseness. "That is her! My Lynn! Let me go!" He would abandon power, abandon the clan, abandon endless wealth, abandon the world's reverence. He only wanted his girl back. The 17-year-old beneath the rose trellis, clutching poetry, soft-eyed, loving him with every fiber of her being. But they held him fast, binding his body with his lifelong duties, status, purpose, trapping him away from his last salvation. Mist churned, the river roared, night silent and dead. He stood on the cold bridge, staring at the endless black water, no longer able to feel warmth anywhere in his body. The agony in his chest far outmatched any flesh wound, a soul torn apart, every breath thick with the metallic taste of blood, pain pushing him to his knees. Search teams arrived through the night, lantern light piercing the fog, boats crisscrossing the river, searchlights sweeping the black surface without pause. All night long. From dawn's earliest hours until mist lifted and sunrise spilled over waking London, the search never halted. Samuel stood rigid at the bridge's center all night, staring down at the water like a broken, lonely statue. His clothes soaked through, dried blood crusting his fingertips, his eyes hollow and lifeless, no spark left. Morning came, the tide slowing. Searchers finally found her thin, quiet form on the shallow banks downstream. She lay still on a white stretcher, her neutral coat soaked through, what hair clinging to her pale face, her skin translucent white, no trace of pain or terror, only utter peace, as if she slept deeply, freed from all mortal suffering. 10 years of love and hatred, tangled fates, at an end. Samuel stepped forward slowly, his steps unsteady, drained of strength, every tread falling on a blade. He knelt at last, trembling fingers brushing her cold cheek, the touch frigid, no trace of living warmth left. His girl would never smile at him again, never murmur "amu" softly, never rush to him filled with joy. "Lynn!" He whispered the name gently, a soft sigh, hot tears falling onto her cold hands, drop after drop, burning yet powerless to restore even a fragment of their old tenderness. "I was wrong. I am so deeply wrong." No answer came, only empty silence, wind mourning through the city. Chapter 7 Truth Unveiled, Damned for Eternity. Evelyn's funeral was quiet and solemn, no noise or fanfare. The Hart family mourned her lifelong suffering, holding a modest service without grand invitations or elaborate tributes, only a handful of relatives coming to bid her farewell. London poured rain for 3 straight days, thin drizzle falling non-stop, as if heaven wept endless tears for their fruitless love. Samuel stood in the farthest corner of the cemetery, a stranger, motionless for the entire day. He did not draw near, did not lay offerings, had no right to bid her goodbye. He had been her greatest joy, and her deepest disaster, the faith she chased for 10 years, and the reason she walked to her death. He did not deserve to grieve her. After the funeral, Evelyn's personal physician sought Samuel out. The middle-aged doctor's face was heavy with sorrow and pity, handing a thick stack of medical records to Samuel. "Lord Astley, these are all Miss Hart's medical documents from the past 3 years. I should honor patient confidentiality, yet Miss Hart endured such a bitter life. I believe you deserve to know the full truth." Samuel's fingers shook as he took the thin, weightless pile of paper. He flipped through page after page, reading every line carefully. Severe depression, chronic somatic disorders, functional heart failure, multi-organ strain from perpetual insomnia. Dense medical notes documented every ounce of pain and torment she had endured for 3 years. Every line was a bloodied blade, carving through his remaining sanity and flaying his heart raw. The doctor's voice rumbled low and mournful beside him. Miss Hart collapsed emotionally after leaving London 3 years ago, grief coiling tight in her heart, unable to sleep through a single night. She refused medication, refused treatment, enduring every illness alone. Her heart condition had already grown critical, risking fatal heart failure at any moment. She clung to life only for one fixed obsession. "She told me she had to return to London one last time, to ask you that single question in person. If she received the answer she sought, her obsession would fade, and she would have no more ties to this world." Samuel's vision blurred completely, tears flooding down to soak the medical papers, smudging the printed lines. Her return had not been clinging, not bitterness. She had clung to the last threads of her failing life for one final question, seeking release at the end of all things. And he had crushed her last spark of hope, snuffed out her final reason to live. "There is one more thing, my lord." The doctor paused, then spoke the final truth. "The Astley clan crisis 3 years ago resolved completely 6 months later. You purged the opposition and stabilized the business without needing to sacrifice your love for the greater good. The terms forcing your separation were merely your great-uncle's final desperate gamble, a bluff. You could have protected both your family and Evelyn. Yet you chose to bear all blame alone, pushing Miss Hart away. You feared she would be dragged into power struggles, feared clan factions would target her for the rest of her days. You believed harsh separation would keep her safe, yet your coldness became her personal hell." A deafening crash echoed inside Samuel's mind, his final line of defense crumbling utterly. He stumbled backward several steps, leaning against a cold stone wall to stay upright. The sacrifice he thought would set her free, the cruelty he thought would shield her peace. 3 years of lonely torment, 3 years of gnawing regret. He had deceived everyone, even himself. He had willingly borne the reputation of heartlessness, willingly let her hate him for life, only to grant her a quiet, safe future. In the end, all his restraint, all his sacrifice, all his self-inflicted suffering amounted to nothing but a bitter farce. He had killed the woman who loved him most with his own hands. Extinguished the only light in his life with his own hands. Buried 10 years of love beneath fog, beneath river water, beneath an irreversible dead end. The doctor watched his shattered, empty expression, sighed softly, and spoke one last line before turning to leave. Miss Hart died believing you never loved her at all. The empty cemetery corridor held only Samuel, alone, adrift in desolation. Wind and rain swept through the passage, cold enough to freeze bone, no comfort, no warmth to be found. He pressed a fist hard to his chest, broken, suppressed sobs spilling from his throat, low and hopeless, echoing through the rainy emptiness, agony overwhelming him. The world called him ruthless, sharp-witted, master of every chess piece, ruler of mortal power. Yet in his life, he outmaneuvered his clan, outwitted every political rival, conquered every battle only to miscalculate love, to lose the one woman who mattered. He thought letting go would spare her worry. He never understood that a world without him had always been purgatory for her. Chapter 8 Solitude for all remaining days, trapped forever in the fog prison. After Evelyn's death, Samuel changed entirely. He fulfilled his marriage contract with the Windsor family as promised, yet the union existed only as an empty business formality, no wedding ceremony, no shared life, no warmth whatsoever. He granted the Windsor family all the power and wealth they desired, yet not a single shred of his heart. Husband and wife lived apart for all their days, strangers bound only by the superficial dignity of aristocratic society. He secured absolute control over the Astley family's empire, power unrivaled, holding half of London's financial lifelines, every gesture commanding from thousands. Yet he lost every trace of human vitality. The faint warmth that had once flickered in his eyes vanished entirely, replaced by endless ice and hollow despair. He grew colder, crueler, more isolated, distant from all human contact, his brutality exceeding his younger self, his frigid aura driving everyone away. The vast Astley manor remained grand and opulent, yet it fell silent forever, no warmth of home to fill its halls. He preserved every trace Evelyn had left behind, untouched, perfectly intact. The rose trellis bloomed richly every summer, sweet perfume filling the air, but the girl with poetry and soft eyes was gone. The study sofa stayed clean, the warm lamp lit every night, but the girl who sat beside him through late work hours, murmuring AMU in a gentle voice, would never return. He still worked deep into the night, buried under endless paperwork, then drove alone to Parliament Bridge without fail. Through every season, storm or mist, year after year, every single night, without exception. He stood alone where she had waited that dawn, staring at the rushing river and endless fog, remaining there until sunrise. The wind still cut cold, the mist still stretched endless, yet no one came rushing to him, no one bound to him by obsession, no one to share his fate. He dispatched endless teams to drag the entire Thames River for years, combing every inch of the riverbed, yet never recovered the fallen platinum cufflink. That crest engraved with thorn rose and silver sword, the promise of his youth, her 10 years of sincere devotion lost forever in the dark river depths, unseen, unknown to all. Just like their love, grand and passionate, burning bright before vanishing silently, unremembered by the world, leaving only him to grieve and regret alone. Years slipped past. Samuel remained tall and youthful, time gentle to the powerful, leaving few marks of age, only deeper loneliness and weariness etched into his bones. He became London's most legendary, most miserable noble, holding wealth across the city, yet his heart empty and barren. Countless noble ladies still admired him, vying for his attention, showering him with affection, yet he ignored every advance, untouched. His heart was filled to overflowing with regret and longing, no room left for another soul, another life. One late autumn night, London fog rolled thick again, identical to the night of their final farewell. Samuel stood alone at Parliament Bridge's centre, wrapped in a black overcoat, his tall frame lonely and isolated, slate blue eyes fixed on the dark river, empty and lifeless. Fog wind brushed his ears, carrying the faint echo of a girl's soft murmur, whispering AMU. His body stiffened, and he lifted his hand instinctively, reaching for her gently, only to grasp nothing but cold, empty mist. Illusions were only illusions, fading to nothing when he woke. He spoke softly, his voice hoarse and worn, heavy with years of unending remorse, confessing to the boundless fog stretching all around him. Lynn, I regret everything. Not a single moment has passed without guilt gnawing at me. I loved you, 10 years of love, unbroken for every remaining day of my life. Every word steeped in love, every syllable steeped in sorrow, every confession years too late. Nothing in the world hurt more than this cruel truth. When she lived, he had acted cruelly to protect her, letting her hate him until her last breath, dying with unhealed grief. After she left, he faced endless empty years of silent repentance, silent longing, clinging to a love and sacrifice no living soul would ever know. He had hidden the truth deep in his heart, trapped in perpetual silence. Epilogue. Fog blankets all London, endless, unbroken. The world says London's fog is soft and romantic, hiding every city romance within its haze. Only Samuel knows London's fog is a prison, purgatory, an inescapable fate woven into his life. He is trapped within the mist, trapped within memories, trapped within endless remorse and longing for Evelyn, never to find release. Years pass, London remains prosperous, noble families rise and fall, the world shifts and changes. No one remembers the summer day beneath the rose trellis, the boy and girl who fell at first sight. No one recalls the grand, tragic 10-year love that shook aristocratic society. No one knows the cold, ruthless Lord Astley, ruler of endless power, spent every remaining year longing for a girl who would never return, bearing eternal solitude for a sacrifice that destroyed everything. He won the whole world, yet lost his one and only light. The rest of his days stretch endless, empty without you. Fog surges forth, all warmth burned to ash. From this day forward, no Evelyn and Samuel walk the mortal world's romance. Only London's eternal fog, lingering year after year, holding a love and regret unknown to all, unspoken until death, sealed forever in tragedy.